But transition towns, in a sense, picks up at that point. The key aim of transition is to prepare people and communities for a period with less dependence on oil, less burning of fossil fuels. And it's also connected with that, very much about a transition away from growth, simply growth, to the idea of sustainability. It's about cultivating resilience. That's a word that's often used in transition circles. Resilience, particularly at the local level, to come to terms and to live and organise with the consequences of that climate, that post-peak oil. And the other key thing I wanted to say, by way of introduction, is that transition towns, despite the awful scenario, is essentially positive. It's a very positive movement that we're engaged in here. It's also very practical. It's about getting people to think about the things they, as individuals and friends and groups, can do together and share and support each other in making manageable responses. So it's a very practical and a very positive approach. Ginny's going to say a bit more about what that means at an individual level in a minute. But just to finish with, if I may say, just to give you a flavour of what we see in transition as the real key tasks. First and foremost, and tonight's a good example of it, there's a message to be spread. Raising awareness is one of the key things that transition has to do and do well. So it's about raising understanding of what needs to be done, what can be done, and preparing people for the scenario. Secondly, and as it were moving into the doing of the bill, it's very much about responding to those problems I've briefly touched on. Transitioners talk about the energy descent plan, a rather pompous phrase, but you will understand immediately what it means. It is about reducing our dependency and our use of fossil fuels in particular, CO2, climate change, global warming, and to promote less energy consumption, less waste, and more use of renewable sources. So that's one of the key things that transition has to do. It has to devise and implement an energy descent plan. And then perhaps lastly, just turning to the sort of mode with which that key task is undertaken. As I've said, it's very much about involving people, involving communities and groups, and working together. That's one of the positive things that I think I have quickly picked up as important to me in transition. That's what I love about transition most, is it is the togetherness of this, or participating in transition groups. And it's very much a wonderful organisation and a wonderful movement, because it is about recognising that every individual has ideas, has knowledge, has some principles and values, and letting 1,000 flowers bloom, as it were, going with everybody's ideas, seems a very democratic and a very hopeful way of working. But more of that from Ginny in a minute. At the same time, I think it's absolutely vital that movements like this do work with the existing organisations, and I suppose local government's the obvious one in my other time. I'm a local councillor here, and the linkage between transition, which is part of the local governance family, and the formal authorities, is a very important and a very significant relationship, I think, that we have to work at. I think secretly that transition movement is the future for local government. It is of the people and for the people and with the people, and it will work on those premises. But enough from me. A little bit more, as I say, about the spirit of transition, which Ginny's going to take. For those of you who are really keen to learn more than about 10 minutes aloud, there's a wonderful website. Ginny.
Thank you, John.
Right, my name's Ginny Lee. Now, I've lived in Malvern for about 4 years now. I've got 4 children, and I've also got 1 grandchild. And I became concerned. I was hearing stuff all over the place. And when I heard that there was a transition movement starting up in Malvern, I wanted to be part of it. So I've been part of it from when it started last June. So what I've done, I've written a little bit about it and what it meant to me. And the reason I'll have to use words is because at my age, my memories are a little bit vague. So I will read it. First of all, it is the word transition. People go, why is it called transition? What is transition? Well, we heard a little bit about it from John. Why the word transition? Transition means change or passing from one state to another. As you've heard, we're in a time when oil is running out and the consequences of climate change are knocking on our door. This year, over 300,000 people would die as a direct consequence of climate change. Within the transition movement, which is a global movement, it's not about little England, it's all over the world, using everywhere. Communities are encouraged to flourish. Individuals are inspired to build on and share their creativity. This is an all-inclusive grassroots movement. Everyone is encouraged to be part of it. The aim is to create a resilient community that will be able to source all or most of its needs at a local level. This may seem as a huge, huge challenge, an impossible task, but we've done it before. We're just a little bit out of practice. Phil Hopkins in the Transition Handbook used the analogy of a cake to describe what we have to do. He talks about the time before the railway system. If we wanted a cake, the ingredients for the cake would be sourced locally. We'd make it here. Now the cake would be imported from anywhere in the world where it was cheapest. And maybe, just maybe, the cherry on the top would be found locally. This way of sourcing foods and commodities is no longer the way forward. We need to go back to making the cake from local produce. This is not a retrograde step. It's about building a sustainable community. A community that can support itself and offer support to others. So transition is about change. Changing our mindset in a positive way. It's about building communities. It's about our local environment and what it can produce. It's about discussing and sharing ideas. It's about sharing your skills. It's about looking after each other. It's about socialising. It's about understanding the fertility of our own community. It's about change and passing, as we said at the beginning, from one state to another without noticing the journey. This is my vision of transition. I am part of the transition movement and I'm part of the awareness group. Now the awareness group tries to pass the word on to show you what is happening in our world and what you can do about it. So please take leaflets, come to any of the events because you will find out a lot more about it. There's a great evening on the 1st of October where those words at the beginning of this leaflet is from a film by a young person called Leo Murray. He has done this 20-minute cartoony and it just gets the message across. So this was my vision of transition. Now, you've been sitting all nice and lovely. What we'd like you to do now is just turn around or get yourself in a little group or something and have a chat with the person next to you to see if you knew what transition was all about, or did you come just to see Satish, which is absolutely brilliant. Also, just have a little chat with somebody nearby or maybe somebody you don't know and just discuss what transition means to you. Thank you.